Holbrook Travel is pleased to be bringing you this webinar today, Taking Flight, What's Next for Audubon's Bird-Based Tourism Initiative. We'll be discussing next steps in the implementation of Flyway expeditions and Audubon's International Alliances program to support the conservation of important bird areas and strengthen local communities. We're joined today by Matt Jeffrey and Maki Tazawa from National Audubon Society and by Andrea Holbrook from Holbrook Travel. I'd like to start by introducing our panelists, and then Matt will share a video and give an update on the work Audubon is doing. Andrea will give us an update on the Flyway Expeditions program, and then we'll open it up for discussion and Q&A. So to kick it off, allow me to introduce our guests today. Matt Jeffrey is the Deputy Director of the International Alliances Program. Matt has been with Audubon since 2006. His background includes more than 15 years in environmental conservation with a focus on protecting important bird areas in Latin America and the Caribbean. We're also joined by Maki Tazawa, Project Specialist for the International Alliances Program. Maki manages the Bird Tourism Project and other government conservation grants throughout the Americas. She has experience with different conservation organizations and a background in ecology, conservation, and Latin culture. And last but not least, Andrea Holbrook has been the president of Holbrook Travel for the last almost 20 years. She also oversees Selva Verde Lodge and Rainforest Reserve in Costa Rica. Andrea is active in a number of conservation groups, and she is a board member of the Sarapiqui Conservation Learning Center, also in Costa Rica. Thank you to all three of you for joining us. And now we'll turn it over to Matt, who will share a short video and give us an update on Audubon's Bird-Based Tourism Initiative. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Suddenly went somewhere else. Welcome everyone and good afternoon to you all. Thank you for joining. My name is Matthew Jeffrey and I am really happy to be sharing what are the results of a great initiative from Audubon and talking to you about the initiative after this video and ways in which you can support efforts for conservation internationally by traveling to these sites and engaging the people that have benefited from this program. So first of all, we're going to show a short video.
Business. In 2015, the National Audubon Society, in partnership with the Multilateral Investment Fund, a member of the IDB group, embarked on an ambitious initiative called Strengthening Bird-Based Tourism as a conservation and sustainable development tool. The project worked with local NGO partners in 4 different countries: Paraguay, Belize, Guatemala, and the Bahamas. In each country, communities are struggling to create income in ways that don't degrade the natural resource base. Audubon and our local partner NGOs set out to help locals see the opportunity in ecotourism and how to access the potential income it could bring them. The project pinpointed impoverished towns near existing protected areas and important bird areas that are also rich in biodiversity. In an effort to open doors, the initiative developed comprehensive bird guide training curriculums at a basic introduction level and advanced level. Taken over multiple weeks, trainings included classroom and field experiences.
Before, we were just doing bird watching by ourselves, but after this training that they gave us, we had learned a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge in general for our concept of birds.
The local guides are they want to show you a good time. They want you to see the birds. They want you to see the nature. And they made you feel comfortable. They made you feel good. And I almost had some emotional experiences. It's just been absolutely spectacular.
So far, more than 275 birding guides graduated from basic training, and over 70 guides have graduated from advanced training. Today, over 119 of the trained guides and park staff contribute to citizen science using the eBird platform to record their bird sightings in order to help organizations predict changes to bird populations. To strengthen bird ecotourism and improve the credibility of local businesses, the initiative delivered training for over 400 local small to medium-sized businesses, focusing on business management, marketing, communication, and hospitality. To highlight sites and guide tourists to visit the best birding destinations, 6 new national birding trail systems were developed, and all 5 destinations held bird festivals, helping to cement stakeholder relationships and highlight the wealth of bird tourism in the countries. Audubon's bird-based tourism initiative had a wide-reaching impact. Nearly 1,800 adults attended conservation programs on birding, and over 5,500 students participated in environmental education programs related to birds. The initiative also pushed momentum forward for the creation of the 92,000-acre Jolter Cays National Park in the Bahamas, a critical area for endangered shorebirds like the piping plover. Local people, NGOs, and government agencies can now see the enormous potential of bird-based tourism through this initiative. Together, we have made great strides in protecting birds and their habitats and in providing people with alternative, sustainable livelihoods. After all, where birds thrive, people prosper.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully everyone was able to hear that. It was a little quiet, but hopefully you got the gist, and we're more than happy to share the link to that video going forward, and which is not stopping by the sounds of it. Hang on to, sorry. Moved on to the next one. Well, welcome again. What we really want to highlight here is why Audubon, and what is Audubon doing internationally, and how you may be able to help by taking a trip to see these wonderful birds in these locations and support the local economy, which in turn will help support the habitats and the birds that we all care about. It's no secret, National Audubon Society has a strategic plan and a mission to support birds throughout their life cycles, as more than 50% of the birds that breed in Canada and the United States actually rely upon habitats in Latin America and the Caribbean in order to survive. And we really feel that by working in Latin America and the Caribbean to save a set of species, we can not only support our birds, or the birds that breed here in the US and Canada, but we can also support the local endemics and engage local people to support the local habitats. It's no secret that migration happens. We all know it does. But what we're really trying to do through this program is link up some of our key conservation efforts, like here with the piping plover, which we know we made the discovery in 2011 that about 50% of the Atlantic coast population winter in the Bahamas. We're able to make those connections and sort of link this program in to support the conservation efforts in the Bahamas for those birds. Similar for species like the wood thrush, breeds predominantly on the eastern side of the United States in forested habitats, but relies upon the forests and habitats of Central South America, focused mainly the big populations of sort of Belize, Guatemala. And so again, this program, as we talk about in a second, really has helped engage communities in those locations to support birds like the wood thrush. So why bird tourism? Why does it matter? What is it really going to help? And lots of people ask that. What's the conservation value for this bird-based tourism initiative? Well, I have to tell you that it's really exciting, and the results are just tremendous in really creating a national focus on birds. For many of these countries, it's the first time the government agencies, not just the ministries of environment, but the ministries of tourism, the ministries of commerce, are really taking note of birds, and birds being, bird tourism being a viable commodity and income for the country. It's a $48 million industry in Belize, for example, and nobody had done the analysis of that before we came along with this program. If you can talk economics, you can actually get a lot of things changed for the better. It supports local economic development, so this is an opportunity. It takes people to communities that are off the beaten track a little bit, important communities around the national protected areas or within or surrounding important bird areas, and really engage them in this thriving tourism industry. So it benefits them, and if they're earning money through bird tourism, they're not earning money through poaching and clearing the forest. it really has engaged and empowered the communities, and we're actually developing in places like Paraguay. We're developing for the first time bird groups. The training, the tourism prospect is creating groups for the first time that are using citizen science, and they're really engaged in not just birds, but then the conservation efforts that go on around them. And obviously it supports habitat and species conservation. We just heard in the video of the 92,000 acres that was protected in the Bahamas. We can also talk about the poaching in Belize and the reduction of poaching specifically at Coxco. So the goals of the project were pretty simple: to increase the number of local people benefiting from the bird-based tourism industry, to increase the revenue for protected area management so that we can increase the support for habitat protection that our birds and many endemic birds rely upon, as well as many other, a lot of other biodiversity, and improve protections of those ecosystems and in fact the ecosystem health. So the project, and again a lot of this has been talked about in the video, but we had two levels of training: a basic to sort of engage community members, and advanced to engage or to take on those community members to a higher level. In total, about 319 guides were trained. At the basic level, I believe there's about 110 women were engaged in that. We had a big effort to try and get more women guides engaged wherever we were, so that was better in some places than others, but certainly there was an effort there. Over 7,000 community members actually taking some sort of bird education course. Again, it really changed the attitudes of multiple members or stakeholders within the communities. It really was a powerful program. We've introduced 120 local people to using eBird. I mean, this wasn't happening. It was really eBird was being used by foreigners, by travelers going down to these countries. Almost no uptake of local people using eBird and reporting their sightings. And so this is sort of a really exciting way to sort of engage and increase citizen science. We've seen new Christmas bird counts. We've seen better support for initiatives like the International Plover Census in the Bahamas. And we're in the development of birding apps, one for Colombia that will be out later this year, and one for Paraguay, which I believe is already available on the App Store. And more importantly, or as part of this conservation initiative, we really have changed the way people see the world around them. I fell in love with things that I didn't even know were in my country. I mean, that's one of the guides that just had never been introduced to a pair of binoculars and seeing the birds and the wildlife around them. It really has been a very empowering process and very gratifying, not just for us as the implementers, but for the community members throughout the initiative. It really has just changed lives, changed people's attitudes. The conservation results that have been made possible because of the engagement and this particular initiative. Again, the 92,000 acre Jolta Keys are now protected. We've reduced poaching in Coxcomb by about 95% through this and other livelihood projects. And we really have created environmental advocacy, especially in the Bahamas, where it really didn't exist on the island of Andros before this program. So really some great conservation results. And just flicking through there, it's just another quote from another person that this time from Guatemala, who really is seeing not just that he's out doing the birding and with a pair of binoculars and looking at the birds and taking people around, but the broader community is starting to take note of that and getting more engaged. And so it's really exciting to see sort of this grassroots groundswell of appreciation for birds and nature, and we need to continue to drive that. So the big effort, and I'll hand over to Andrea in a second, the big effort now is how do we ensure that these guides that have been trained are kept engaged and they keep doing the work that they're doing. We can keep engaging them through citizen science and different efforts, but what's really important is they start to make money out of this. And so working with organizations like Holbrook, and we'll soon be forming a partner with Rock Jumper, and in the future there may be other tour operators that can support us. We want to ensure that people are visiting these places and using these guides, so that the initiative over the long term not only will support economic opportunities for those local community members, but will also help to drive economics that actually reduce the impact on the protected areas and actually increase the monetary value of those sites. So the government through to the local communities see a much greater value in having intact habitats that support our birds. So hopefully many of you may have questions from that, and we're happy to answer them later on, but hopefully you get a sense of what we've tried to achieve here. And now I'm going to hand over to Andrea, who's going to take this forward and finish off the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate that introduction, and I'm excited to share a little bit about us here at Holbrook and how we're playing a role. Just very briefly, for those of you that don't know Holbrook, we are based in Gainesville, Florida, established in 1974, so over a 40-year history, and many, many years working with birding and nature and educational groups, putting together programs in Latin America, East Africa, and points beyond. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Holbrook, explain Flyway expeditions, and sort of chime in on a lot of what Matt has already shared, and also explain a little bit of how it all works from a nuts and bolts program, as well as talk to you about some of the programs that we've been working up around the IAP program in terms of trips that you can actually plan, as well as trips that individuals can join that are dated departures. So as I mentioned to you, we started in 1974, and we have really seen bird-based tourism be an economic engine. Probably the best example that I have is you know, our work with Selva Verde Lodge in the lowland tropical rainforests of Costa Rica. There's no question that birding tourism is a huge part of what keeps the lodge going, and that could be anything from a specific, you know, intensive birding group to a family or student group in which birding is just part of what they do. But the local guides are it's really a training ground or breeding ground, if you will, for natural history guides. It's tremendous to see the way that Selva Verde and La Selva Biological Station and other reserves in the area have just made, you know, birding a tremendous skill to have, and many of the young people aspire to be naturalist guides because of what they've seen as the job opportunities that are generated from that. So we're just really thrilled to be invited in on the ground floor of the International Alliances program, and we're just thrilled to be a part of that, and saw it as a great opportunity to I think really work with our sustainable tourism programs. So I think this is a great initiative that Holbrook's very proud to support. So how are Flyway expeditions different? I think that Matt has spoken well to just the tremendous resources that have been put into training, both on the natural history and the bird identification, but also best practices for businesses. So our programs, the Flyway expedition programs, are really tailored around that. The guide training, we are using IAP for the Flyway expeditions programs. Those are all guides that either at a local level or a national level or both have been through the training, and looking at specifically engaging in the itineraries the local businesses that have participated in these workshops, the community groups that have been very active, and the conservation groups as well. So These are some of the things that set the Flyway expeditions apart. And here's how you can get involved. So we're inviting Audubon chapters and bird clubs and nature groups that are interested to consider, planning a trip for their members and forming their own group, or joining one of the trips that we have actually dates and leaders set up for. So that would be for Bahamas, Belize, Guatemala, and Colombia. Let's talk a little bit about what the benefits of forming your own group. First of all, it helps build member engagement. I'm sure many of you have participated, and just the time that you spend in the field together is so valuable to build those relationships. And there's no question that they are a fundraising entity. Each program does have a fundraising amount for the local chapter as well as for the National Audubon Society as well. So there is a built-in contribution, and Holbrook has a lot of experience and makes it very, very easy to just pick a date and start promoting. So we really take care of a lot of the nuts and bolts. Let's talk a little bit about the programs themselves. These are all, by the way, on our website, so if you want to look for more details, I'm just going to give a very quick overview. We have two programs in Guatemala. One is focused on the Petén region with Wildlife Conservation Society as the conservation partner. Very exciting area, Washactún, which is, and of course the birding here is phenomenal. So this is one of our programs. The second Guatemala program is a little bit longer, and it is with the Vivamos Mejor conservation partner, and it's focused in the highlands with Lake Atitlan. It's an 11-day program. In Belize, we have a shorter program with the Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary and the conservation partner being the Belize Audubon Society, and community-based groups such as the Scarlet Macaw group, which is very, very exciting. Matt can share also some details on that specifically. Matt, would you just like to chime in on the Red Bank program, the Red Bank Bed and Breakfast rather, and just a little bit talking about your experience working with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the community groups that we worked in is a village just outside of Coxcomb. It's one of the buffer communities to Coxcomb Basin Wildlife Sanctuary, called Red Bank. Red Bank, for anyone that knows, is actually one of the few places in Belize that is quite easy at the right time of year to see scarlet macaws coming in. And there's the Scarlet Macaw Bed and Breakfast is a small community group that's been struggling for a few years to try and get a tourism venture up and running. And so what we're able to do with this this project is engage them not just in the training their guides so they have professional guides with them, but to also work with them on their business operations, improving their business, how they run their business, think about their conservation plans for the area, how they fit into the conservation efforts, and sort of educate them on what's going on with the scarlet macaw conservation across the country. And so hopefully if you visit it today, you're actually going to learn a lot more about scarlet macaw and scarlet macaw conservation. You're going to see some really wonderful community members, some great guides, but also hopefully a thriving business that is just going to go from strength to strength from here.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. So on to Colombia, a very exciting destination, particularly after a lot of the peace agreements, and it is just, there's no question, it is an absolute mecca. Let's say the El Dorado of Latin America for birding. So this program is one that focuses on the Santa Marta area and the indigenous community, the Wayuu peoples, as well well. So it's a very exciting destination to be offering and working with local guides that are, are very eager to receive the U.S. market after so many years of really not having, a possibility of going far afield like this in Colombia. Bahamas, we're very excited about this. This is a destination that we've only recently rolled out. Actually, our last webinar, we didn't even have the program ready, but we have 2 programs in the Bahamas, one featuring the sexy crown jewel, I call it, of Inagua, and the other featuring Eleuthera with the very rare Kirtland's warbler, which is obviously a highlight there. So I'm just going to very quickly breeze through. So those are those programs that I've just breezed through. Again, there's more information online under Flyway Expeditions, and you can see the details there. Those are programs that are costed in such a way that they're ready to go. They include the donation for a local, as I said, and for the national. And we, if you're interested in planning those for your for your group or your association, please just give us a call. It's just that easy to look at something for 2018 or 2019 and start, get started. These trips that we have here are dated departures, and we did these with the, in a way, the hopes that we could inaugurate this exciting International Alliances program. So we have big names associated with them, one of them being Matt Jeffrey, as well as Gloria Lentijo in Colombia, and John Beavers and Dave Ewert in Guatemala and Bahamas, respectively. So these are also featured on our website, and unlike the trips to plan, these are trips that if the dates are right and you're interested in these areas, you can simply sign up as an individual. So,
can I just jump in there for one
sure.
second? The idea for these trips, what you've got is as myself, but people like Dr. David Ewert and John Beavers. These are people that really know these countries inside out. They know the conservation efforts. They've been involved in the conservation efforts and brought things forward from scratch in some respects. So these. These inaugural sort of departures are an opportunity, and this is a pretty rare opportunity to have people that not just know the countries but really know the conservation story and can guide you through sort of a behind-the-scenes conservation experience, as well as enjoying the birds and the culture. This is really going to sort of hopefully open people's eyes to the efforts going on to conserve habitats, species, and ecosystems, and so hopefully we can sort of do that sort of bigger.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for underlining that. I totally agree that these are rather unique opportunities to be sort of in the field with you and others like you who've really designed this entire program and really know it from the inside out. So I think it is very exciting. Thank you. Great. Well, I think at this point, what we're really interested in is opening it up for question and answer. I know that there are a lot of people there listening in who, probably have experience in many of these areas and have some questions for us that are going to benefit the entire audience. So we'd love to do that at this point.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea and Matt. We really appreciate your expertise on these topics. As Andrea mentioned, we are going to go ahead and open up the discussion and Q&A portion of the webinar. Just to reiterate from the beginning, if you do have any questions for our panelists, you can enter them, type them into your questions pane in your dashboard. When you send those in, they'll be directed to me, and we can then direct those to our panelists. So we certainly encourage you to share any questions that you may have. I'll go ahead and start it off with a question that I will direct to Matt and to Maki. We've received several questions actually about whether Audubon has plans to expand the International Alliances program into other countries. And so I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about first, how the locations have been chosen that we're focusing on to begin with, and whether there are plans to expand to more countries, and if so, why, or if not, why not?
Thank you, Lindsay. I'll take the first part of that. So the sites that we're focused on and continue to be focused on is a combination of a few different things. One is we really focus in on important bird biodiversity areas and critical protected areas, so that we can actually engage communities around those important sites and give greater value to those already recognized important sites. And then on top of that, we also have looked at the poverty and sort of overlay the poverty maps so that we can look at really engaging the people that really need it most in the work that we're doing. And so through and then we're looking for depending on the country, but strong local conservation organizations like Belize Audubon in Belize, who are able to sort of execute on the ground, and it really fits into their work plans and their efforts, so that there's not just the effort that we're putting together right now, but there's sort of this longevity, the sustainability of these efforts over the long term. In regards to expansion, the initial pilot phase of the project was Belize, Bahamas, Guatemala, and Paraguay, and we already have replicated this now in Colombia, in the Santa Marta area, and we're just beginning with the government of Colombia to expand into 3 additional areas: Central, Southwest, and Northwest Andes, with the government of Colombia. And just last week we were approached by the government of Brazil as to how to sort of potentially replicate the project there. So it's certainly we are replicating it, certainly in Colombia. We want to replicate it in other countries. It's really looking for the resources, identifying the resources, and then moving forward.
Great,
Maki,
thank you.
do you have anything to add to that, Maki?
I would also add that this is it's kind of been deemed, this 4-country project has been deemed a pilot project because we were really testing out this model of using bird-based ecotourism to support conservation and development on the ground. So we are hoping that as our program moves forward, and as other countries and entities realize the importance of kind of developing sustainable ecotourism, that they'll be able to look at this model and see how it has worked.
Great, thank you. You talked specifically about a couple species in particular that will benefit from this program. I think you mentioned the piping plover and the wood thrush as examples. Is that, can you discuss maybe either some other species, or sort of drill down on what the benefits are to not just the habitats, but the individual species?
Yeah, so as discussed, very quickly there, the piping plover in the Bahamas. Andros is the most important site for piping plovers in the Bahamas, and so by engaging the communities in this way, we've really created a much more robust conservation efforts. There's a reduction in disturbance, there's greater awareness of their needs, and so we've really, we're still at the beginning, but we've started to really change the attitudes and create an ethic, a conservation ethic there that is going to help those birds over the long term. Somewhere like Paraguay, people question why Paraguay a little bit. So Paraguay is a long way south. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. If you haven't been there, it's certainly worth a trip. But it's really, really important for long-distance migrant shorebirds. We call them shorebirds, but they really like the grassland wetlands. And through that, there species like the buff-breasted sandpipers. The wetlands just by the capital city, Asunción, is a major stopover for buff-breasted sandpipers as they're making their ways into the grasslands of Argentina. And so that's another species that's going to definitely benefit from this effort. And then in addition, in Guatemala, I mean, just the and Colombia prothonotary warblers, Canada warbler, cerulean warbler, all species. We're really focusing on the areas that those species are found, so that we can really make a huge difference in sort of people's attitudes and the understanding of the impact that they have on these birds and the responsibility they have on these birds as well.
Great, thank you. Tying in with that a little bit, there's a question about whether there are plans to monitor the employment that is generated by this program, the economic development that results from this program, and whether there are plans to kind of do any sort of long-term monitoring on that.
Maki, do you want to take that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. So the question is about whether there are plans to monitor the economic results or the economic benefits, either the employments that has been generated in these areas that you're working in, that Audubon is working in, or as far as any sort of economic development results. Are there any plans to monitor that?
Yeah. So as part of this 4-country project, there were kind of baseline, midline, and endline evaluations that have been done of the sites to gauge what the effect is, and where we're waiting now to hear back on the kind of the endline evaluations. And we are also hoping that the project, through some way or another, will be able to go back 3 years after the culmination of the project and the culmination of our work in these specific sites, to also gauge that information, because we want to make sure that we're actively addressing which areas we're able to gain the most benefits and which areas still need additional support.
Great, thank you. There's a question, I think you touched on this a little bit, about working with other organizations like Rock Jumper. There's a question from someone who says, you know, some of us have traveled with favorite either birding tour companies, or they have favorite guides in specific destinations. What are the plans to involve other birding tour companies in the program?
I can take that. I mean, obviously we're trying to create. You know, the ultimate goal is to get more people going to these places. It really doesn't matter from an Audubon point of view who's going to go to those places. What we'd like to do, just as we've done with Holbrook, and I have to say that Holbrook's been a great partner in doing this, is we've developed itineraries to specifically to take people to specific places and ensure that we're engaging those local guides and those local businesses, so that there really is an economic benefit. One of the challenges we've had a little bit, or that we've seen, is foreign guides coming into the countries and being the guide, and almost no support for those local guides or those local businesses are happening. And so that's sort of the piece we're trying to avoid a little bit, and working with people like Holbrook to ensure that those guides that have been through the training are somehow engaged. And if you're working with a favorite operator, we really encourage you to think about the same thing. One of the things that's exciting about Holbrook is the lead guide, local guide for example, the Belize trip, is somebody that went through our advanced bird guide training, so we have some faith in him. Holbrook has faith in him, and he's the class of 2016. And what's further exciting is at each destination. So if we go to Crooked Tree or we go to Coxcomb, there is an opportunity for one of the guides, one of the local community guides that just took the basic guide training, to gain more experience by participating in that one day or that specific location, a guiding effort sort of as the second guide. And so it really is a great combination of not just visiting the sites, but really engaging not just a guide that takes you around the country, but bringing in these community members that don't currently have the full guiding certifications and things on their way to that, and giving them experience and sort of moving, paying that whole process forward.
If I can also chime in, and thank you, Matt. We certainly appreciate your confidence, and we've been extremely happy to be able to be a part of this on the ground floor. But I totally agree that it does need to, it needs to be much larger, and it is much larger. I am noticing how much different even ministries of tourism are starting to really stand up and pay attention to the birding market and what it requires and what it needs. I guess I would suggest to anyone who does have a favorite tour operator or guide that you try and hook them up with IAP and send them the link and send them information about Matt, and ask them to see if they'd be interested in getting involved. So the more, I think that's important. That's very important.
And I'm just going to piggyback on that as well. I think the more people, the more kind of operating companies that are involved, the better. IAP did, as part of this project, develop kind of independently set itineraries and trail maps that kind of review the different sites that were part of this project, and can lead you to information about local guides if there are operators that people are already kind of fond of working with. And those resources are up on the Audubon International page on the website, as well as Audubon Works. As Matt was saying, we really do want to make sure, and are grateful that Holbrook and Rock Jumper have been so invested in the mission of this project, to make sure that these trips are really ensuring a kind of financial trickle down towards local communities in these areas.
Great, thank you. I have a couple questions. I'll kind of start by directing towards Andrea about people who are maybe interested in leading a group or joining a group. And so one question that we've received is, what credentials would you need to have in order to lead a group if you're interested in organizing one? And how does Holbrook, and I believe also how does Audubon work with an individual who is willing to form a group to help support them?
Great question. There really are no specific credentials that are required. Usually my experience is that you need passion and you need dedication because ultimately really what's involved in leading a group is bringing others with you. So it could be that you are a leader of local excursions for your local Audubon chapter, or you've already led trips internationally, but we're willing to also walk you through if really this is fairly new to you. We have some resources available that help bring the mystery, clarify the mystery of really what's involved. But the qualifications are, the dedication to work with someone at Holbrook, in our case, if you're working with Holbrook, to really start a dialogue and get an idea going of when you'd like to travel. So, for example, we have this Belize trip here, and you say, well, I'd really like to choose my dates. Let's look at February of 2019, and we really take care of sort of guiding you through that entire process. And what was the second part of that question, Lindsay?
I think you kind of addressed it. It was just kind of how does Holbrook help support an individual who's willing to form a group?
The word support did trigger one other thing, which is that we, in addition to setting up the logistics, working with you, we do have a great marketing team, which Lindsay is a part of, and a great a part of. So we set up a either public or private webpage that allows you to direct your audience. And I say public or private, meaning you can either have it be something that we help you, you know, sell people into, or if it's something where you really want it to restrict it only to your particular community, that's also fine. That web page is set up. People can enroll online. We have marketing materials in terms of flyers and other resources to help you get the word out and build enrollment.
Great, thank you. To kind of to follow up on that, do you have an ideal group size, and are there minimums and maximums to the group sizes?
I think that, you know, we tend to not have any birding groups that are over 14 participants. Our pricing tends to be based on a minimum of 10 going. So that's let's say a good idea, like a frame of reference there. Yes, I also wanted to mention back to these specifications, or you know, what background someone needs to have. The local guides that Matt was referring to, both at the, you know, regional level as well as the national level, really provide the baseline expertise that you need. You don't need to know. You're not expected to be the expert from a birding perspective. You're really there to provide the glue that brings this community together, and you're all learning together. So you don't need expertise, you know, specific expertise in the birding of that particular region.
Okay, and for the different itineraries that are developed, can you talk a little bit about what the difficulty level is, or the expertise level, I should say, both in terms of the terrain and the number of miles that you're hiking each day, and also, I guess, in terms of the expertise for birders?
That's a really good question, and I would say that trips of this kind, birding trips in general, you know, there is a certain amount of fitness and activity level that you need to have to be able to, you know, keep up the pace. And so, you know, or expect, you know, early mornings, very early mornings to get the, you know, the best birding time of the day. Expect fairly, you know, rigorous hikes in some cases. It's a little too difficult to generalize. You know, each country is a little bit different, so we would probably need to go into some detail with a particular itinerary in order to comment on that. There are countries where it would be easier for someone who maybe moves at a slower pace, and there are other countries where Colombia is a good example of a more rigorous destination in terms of the physical requirements, also because of altitude.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have time for maybe just one or two more questions. If we don't get to your question today, or if you think of another question after the webinar has ended, I will let you know that you can send an email our way. If it's a question about the Audubon program, about the International Alliances program, you can send an email to international@audubon.org. And if you have a question that's more related to trip planning, you can send an email to Andrea@holbrooktravel.com. And we'll also be sending out a replay of the webinar with the links and information as well. So we certainly encourage you, if you have any questions, to follow up. We do have another question. Someone has asked, they say it would be really useful to know specifically what conservation efforts Audubon or the local partner are conducting along the itinerary. And so they'd like to know, is this information located somewhere where they can access? If they have more questions about specific conservation efforts in the different destinations.
I think right now there's a little bit on the Audubon website. It's not the greatest information, but some of it's there. I think if you write to internationalaudubon.org, we'll be more than happy to sort of have a phone call or walk you through, or even do a webinar with your group before you go to sort of talk about those conservation efforts. And if there's interest, we may be able to it's difficult to do it for absolutely everyone, but we may be able to hook you up with the local groups as well, so that they can maybe even meet you there and sort of do an evening presentation on what's going on.
I also, I don't know if the question was also maybe even very basic, in other words, on the Belize itinerary, is it evident, you know, where you're going to be meeting with different groups that have been a part of the IAP program? And the itineraries themselves, we've made efforts to try and really make sure that that is identified in the itinerary itself.
Great, excellent.
And also just quickly, in general, as Matt was saying, a little bit of that information is up on the Audubon website, and we're hoping to add more for the end of the summer. And kind of in broad terms, environmental education initiatives with local communities have taken place in almost all of the sites across the board. And then conservation initiatives on specific species that you guys can reach out to us about have taken place in the sites as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think that that pretty much wraps up our time today. Is there anything else that any of you would like to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so, Lindsay. I
Okay.
just really, I just really appreciate everyone listening in, and we'd really love to have feedback from you, just from your various perspectives, whether you know, are part of a local Audubon chapter, or you're in the bird tourism business, or you know, from whatever perspective you're in. It's always a little challenging with webinars, because obviously you don't get to hear, you know, or see the audience, but how does this resonate with you, and is it interesting, and what would you like to hear more or less about? We'd love feedback.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, with that, I think we're ready to conclude our webinar for today. I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us and sharing their expertise, and also thank you to every one of you who attended. We really appreciate your attendance today. We hope you found the presentation interesting and informative. The webinar today has been recorded, and we'll be emailing a replay along with the links that we mentioned previously. So thank you again to Matt, Maki, Andrea, and to everyone who attended, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.